All right. Good morning to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those of you also on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much, guys, for joining us this morning. As you know, every week we try to do a discussion of Falcon of Winter Soldier, the episode that aired a few days ago. So as always, just before we hop into our recap, I just want to remind you, make sure that you like and subscribe if you enjoy many of these videos. And of course, you can find us on Twitter at Move and Shake UNLTD, on Instagram at Mover Shakers Unlimited. And of course, if you want to follow the conversation, make sure that you also use that hashtag Falcon Winter Soldier M&SU. All right, so with all that out of the way, let's hop right into what I like to call the spark notes of the prior episode of the recap, as well as some spark notes of what happened in the episode that we just saw. So just to give you a quick recap of what happened prior to this week's episode, see if I can get there. In episode 3, we basically got a sense of the the propaganda machine, I guess you can say, of the GRC, the Global Repatriation Council, and we have that basically this juxtaposition of the perception of the GRC versus the reality. When we have like the reality of Team, I like to call him Team Walker, the new Captain America. They're heading off into a refuge of the Flag Smashers, and we see what they really are about versus the public face that they like to provide. Team Falcon assists Zemo. Team Falcon being Falcon and Bucky assists Zemo in his escape from imprisonment. Of course, in order to seek more information about where the super soldier serum, where its roots come from. Zemo reveals that he has bread because apparently he is a baron. They find this out in their in a funny scene that involves their transport to Madripoor, where they is one of the initial places that Zemo has a contact to find out more about this serum. There we also, unfortunately, in that scene, or should say in that episode, we have the death of, I guess you can say, the surrogate mother, guardian of the Flag Smasher leader, which comes into play in this current episode that I'll discuss in a moment. Team Falcon attempts to go incognito, but ends up getting bailed out. Now, hold on one second. Have a quick echo. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Yay, technology. But yes, Falcon attempts to go, Team Falcon attempts to go incognito to Madripoor. It doesn't go very well. And in that time that they spend in Madripoor, we come across, of course, Sharon Carter, who has, been dealing in some shady dealings in the time since Civil War, because she is, a fugitive on the run. In that time as well, we also get introduced to the doctor who is behind the super soldier serum. We find out there are some other vials that may still be out there in addition to the ones that were taken by the Flag Smashers. So Sharon assists them in finding that doctor. Unfortunately, in that encounter of finding that doctor, he bites the bullet thanks to Mr. Zemo. And we also get an escalation of the Flag Smashers going into Flag Smashers committing an act of arson in their mission to create no borders in terms of their mission. And of course, in their continued pursuit of the Flag Smashers, Team Falcon, they travel to Liberia, which I want to get into a little later, and they encounter, I should say, Bucky encounters a face from his past in the form of Io of the Dora Milaje. which ends that episode. So that was the quick recap. Like I said, so there's so much that happened. So I know it may not seem too much of a recap, but it's just so much to unpack. And in this current episode, we pick it up right from there, where we have Io. We have a flashback of Io and Bucky, where we find out that she was one of the catalysts in providing that deprogramming of him as the Winter Soldier. And then we flash forward to her providing him that ultimatum of an 8-hour window in order to take care of the business that he needs to take care of with Zemo, so that way they can take him back to Wakanda. There's a repercussion of that arson incident from the prior episode, where now the GRC is doubling down on their restrictions with the different borders, which actually further provides issues and problems for the mission that the Flag Smashers have, because again, they're trying to make sure that there aren't any borders, but their escalation of their action actually does the opposite. Let's see what else we had. Team Falcon come to the decision that they were going to track down the Flag Smashers by getting involved, or I should say, tracking down the funeral of the mentor that I had mentioned before that passed away, to be able to track the leader of the Flag Smashers. So they go back to, let's see, one second. They go back to or I should say, the way that they are able to find that out is that they try to go to one of the former refugee spots that the Flag Smashers inhabited. Unfortunately, they're not able to. At least Falcon and Bucky are not able to get the information, but Zemo is able to, pull some information from one of the other folks there, and they finally are able to, with the help and assist from Sharon, are able to find out the location. Once they are there, they have I guess you can say, a showdown with Team Walker. And with Team Walker, they're trying to figure out the decision of, okay, are we going to be pacifists? Are we going to do the pacifist approach? Or are we going to do the forceful, approach? They relent on that pacifist approach initially. And once they get there, of course, just as Sam is about to get through to the League of the Flag Smashers about, the strategies or the methods in which she's trying to carry out her goals and the error of that, we get an interruption of Team Walker, and we have a fight that ensues, where Bucky, or to say Team Walker, we have a pursuit between those two teams, and let's see. In this scuffle, we get the loss of the vials that the Flag Smashers had, and just as Zemo is in this pursuit of the escaping Flag Smashers, just as that's happening, as Zemo is getting rid of the remaining vials that are left, just before he destroys the last vial, Walker is able to intervene and grab that last vial. He doesn't take it, but he hides it. And afterwards, after they're licking their wounds, we get Team Falcon back at Zemo's place, where we see Walker once again, interrupting the events at play and trying to, apprehend Zemo. However, before he could do that, enter the Dora Milaje, who handed to both squads pretty handily. And in all this confusion, Zemo is able to get away. And we have an interesting scene between Team Walker, where Walker and his friend, they're both discussing, okay, the idea of taking the super soldier serum. And whether they should take it. And this kind of juxtaposed, and I apologize, I skipped it a bit, but it juxtaposed the conversation that Zemo has with Sam about taking taking the super soldier serum, in which he, adamantly says that he won't. And in contrast to that, they both agree that if they were given a chance, that they would. So once we have that established, we skip to the Flag Smashers, who are, trying to come up with a strategy they of what to do next, and they decide that they need to separate both teams so that way they can get rid of Captain America, because they figure, okay, if we're going to be able to carry out our mission, in order to do that, we have to get rid of the folks that are at our heels first, to be able to focus on our mission. And the way that they carry out that mission is the leader of the Flag Smashers. She basically threatens the sister of Sam, and in doing so also provides the coordinates in order to provide to Sam. Sam, of course, follows suit to the coordinates that are provided, only to find out that it is a decoy or distraction to separate him from, Walker and company. And once we get there, once we get have that pursuit to get to Walker, we find out that Walker, in a fight with one of the henchmen of the Flag Smashers, has indeed taken the serum. And unfortunately, in the chaos of Team Walker and Team Falcon taking on the Flag Smashers, Walker's friend dies, and of course he loses his. I don't feel like I need to explain it further. He loses his stuff and pursues one of the escaping Flag Smashers, which gives us that super haunting moment where he brutally kills one of the Flag Smashers in front of many onlookers, and we have that haunting image of the shield with blood, just encompassing the entire shield, and we end the episode. So as I said, even in the recap and talking about this episode, there's so much to unpack. There was so much to talk about. And of course, just like I have every single week, I do have a couple of special guests joining me today to talk about it further. So let me introduce them. First up, I have, she provides her journalism talents to Pulp Culture Squad, as well as Comic Mix, and with us, with Movers and Shakers Unlimited. She's also the host of our American Gods Chat, or our AG Chat. So without further ado, and also last but not least, of course, she's also the co-creator of the graphic novel, The Underfoot. Of course, so many things. Let me bring her on. Emily Whitten. Let me bring her on. Hold on. Hey, what's going on, Em?
Hello. Happy Sunday morning.
Happy Sunday morning. All right, so let me introduce our next guest. The next guest that I have here, he is a comic book artist and writer, the creator of the comic known as Love and Capes. Let me bring him on as well. Have Thom Zahler. Give me 1 second. Should be on in a second. There we go. What's going on, Thom?
Hello. Not much. How about you?
Good. So as I said, there's so much to unpack with this episode, guys, because normally my Sparknotes section normally goes pretty short, but there was so much that happened. So before I hop into the Easter eggs, the callbacks, just the psychology of what's happening, what were your generic thoughts or your general thoughts before we really dive deep in this episode? For either of you can
go first. Go.
Okay. Well, I honestly, one thing I thought this episode was, finally somebody just lays out the ideals of the Flag Smashers. And usually I'm against too much exposition and kind of just talking through what's going on. But as someone who's watched all the Marvel movies and is somewhat familiar with US Agent and somewhat familiar with Madripoor and somewhat familiar with Flag, all the stuff that's come up to this, I still was like, so they this thing that happened after all the people disappeared, and now they want to, but what's their motivation? I got it, but I didn't really, it didn't stick. It didn't have impact on me as a watcher until she finally just lays it out. I knew what she would have said, but I wanted someone to actually say it. And I feel like this show, while fun to watch, has been a little bit disjointed and light on character motivations and deeper stuff. I think they're trying with, Bucky and the psychiatry and stuff in the previous episodes. But so one thing I thought was, finally they just came out and were like, here's what they really want, here's what they're thinking. And I usually, as I said, I'm not a big fan, but and of course the other big thing this episode was, John Walker as Captain America. Nobody wanted that. Who wanted that? We knew it was going to go wrong, and of course it went terribly, terribly wrong. So those were a couple of my takeaways. And I loved seeing the Wakandans come in, the Dora Milaje, and just take everyone out, and Bucky with the arm falling off. I mean, that scene was delightful. So those are some of my thoughts, but I won't go on the whole time. I'll let Thom share some stuff too.
Well, yeah, I agree. I think it did a lot of world building that I wished it had done earlier on. Because, like Emily, I didn't understand clearly what the Flag Smashers want, and I still don't completely know. I don't know why they're blowing things up. I don't see what's getting them what they want to do. Are they trying to get rid of the people who are doing it? Are the supplies not being divested? That kind of stuff. I'd liked seeing John Walker. I think they're doing a pretty good job fleshing that character out. I really like the way the actor is playing him, because he's not Black Hat heavy. You can tell he's damaged, and I think this episode did more to set that up. I just wish we didn't have this episode and the last one where we got the sudden scene that he does, he's having post-traumatic stress, because I'm fine with him having post-traumatic stress, but if it's that obvious, unless whatever senator got him into the Captain America program is looking to destroy it, I don't know how he clears those hurdles. We're not seeing him as being damaged because he's being Captain America. It seems like he's damaged and nobody noticed it, and that's a level of incompetence that I'm not that I just wish could be tightened up a little more, because I think they're capable of being better than that.
For sure. And to speak further to what you were saying, Em, I know you were talking about the exposition piece. I would say I was talking to Ben about this. So Ben Penrod, and I was commenting on the second episode. That I would say out of the four thus far, it was my least favorite episode, because it felt like it was super exposition heavy, where you had the introduction of John Walker and you had the introduction of, Isaiah. And I felt that, as I said, normally I don't make this critique. Normally I say, okay, you need to cut 15 minutes, or you need to cut, 20 minutes on the top. You need to cut, something on the back. But with that episode, I felt that could have been two separate episodes. You could have had an episode just focusing on John Walker, and that would have been enough. And you could have had one episode focusing just on Isaiah and that background and that legacy of the super soldier serum, and that would have been, enough. Because you have that, you have the grandson, they could have fleshed that part out, because that may become something down the line, which we will get into. But I felt like that out of the four episodes, that was the weakest for me. And then also on top of that, on a deeper level, I felt like they were trying too hard with the message of BLM. So I felt that it could have been done better without slapping us on the head with the message. I felt that they could have, the example that I gave is, I felt that they could have still executed that by visually showing the black soldiers actually being experimented on. And you didn't have to say anything. You could have just done a flashback and just showed that.
That would be interesting to see.
So I was going to say, yeah, definitely. So with that being said, I wanted to hop into some callbacks and Easter eggs, because all of our episodes have much of that. The first one that I wanted to hop into, and then if there's some other ones that come to mind for you guys, obviously feel free to share, but I just to get the ball rolling, is the deprogramming that we had of Winter Soldier and Wakanda. We up to this point in the films, it's just been alluded to of what transpired in Wakanda, but now we get some more details of what happened over the course of that time, and it was interesting to see that it wasn't just I'm brain farting on her name. I feel bad on Shuri. Yes, thank you. It wasn't just Shuri that played a role in the deprogramming of Bucky, and that Io from the Dora Milaje also was a catalyst in that. So with that being said, what are your thoughts on that element that they called back to, and then maybe some other things that came to mind for you all?
Well, I like seeing that scene because it gives some emotional resonance that we hadn't had with Bucky, and it does the heavy lifting of getting the emotional weight of what happened to him without dealing too much in how he was actually deprogrammed, which is less interesting to me than the fact that he's a damaged person trying to get on with his life. So I thought they did a good job with that, and it paced out nicely for bringing in the Dora Milaje and then expanding on that in this episode. So I was glad to see that.
Cool.
Yeah, the thing is I know, like, WandaVision, I know we're talking about Falcon and Winter Soldier. I know WandaVision is a completely different kind of show, and that was on purpose. And I'm not going to spoil it here because, I don't know who's watching what, but obviously they went in a totally different direction with the emotions and stuff in that show. But I would be more than happy to see more depth in our characters in this show. It is fun to watch, don't get me wrong, but I really like seeing when Marvel kind of digs in and takes some of those quieter moments. And they tried to do that with the psychiatrist scene earlier with Bucky. But one reason I love this scene was because it does call back to Bucky's past. And, I've been rewatching bits of the Captain America Bucky movies. I love Bucky. He's a favorite character of mine in the MCU. And he's very complicated. I like Sam too. I think he's got his own complications, and I think he's got great, motivations and stuff like that. But it was good to see references to the deeper struggles, and I also like seeing how he immediately he sees the Wakandan tech. He knows what's going on because of the time he spent in Wakanda, and I really appreciated that kind of more subtle showing of his time there, where he just immediately is like, I'm going to take a walk, and he goes and he knows how to, approach the issues there.
For sure. And we have a nice comment from Butt Wasted. Interesting name, sir. But yes, I do agree with what you were saying. Showing the deprogramming was a nice way to call back or tie back to his statement of having some calm in Wakanda, for sure. So thank you for that comment. So with that being said, it also, just that idea of that deprogramming also plays into a theory that after watching the last few episodes causes me to double down on a theory that I have, which we will get into at the very end. We'll leave the end for theories and things that may be on the way. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about too was the location of Latvia. It plays a role very much in this episode, and when it comes to the MCU or Marvel, even though it may not seem like things don't have a reason or a reason why they pick certain places, I feel like it does, because when I think of Latvia, I already think of Latveria. So I'm like, oh, Latveria's around the corner, cool. So just with that idea, I don't know if that was something that you guys, when you saw that location, like it brought that up, or if there were some other nods or Easter eggs that we had that came to mind. But
I mean, it occurred to me briefly. I don't know what we're gonna see there. I did think of it. And I know that this is last episode, but seeing Madripoor was pretty interesting because we don't see that. We haven't seen it in the live stuff yet, as far as I recall. And The last time I remember seeing it was in video games, if I'm remembering correctly, from the Ultimate Alliance games, I think is where I saw Madripoor for the first time as a visual thing. Please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I've seen a lot of Marvel over the years. So I'm liking seeing you know, the both them going to real places and fictional places, and I would be interested to see, you know, if we're going to see more of that particular location.
For sure. Thom?
I really like seeing Sam be a counselor again, because I thought that
Yes.
was one of the most interesting parts of him being in Winter Soldier. And he's probably my favorite character, with the asterisk of Baron Zemo is charming for a mass murderer who knows how to dance.
Yes, yeah, I forgot all about that.
Conflicted because he's so, Sorry, go ahead, Thom.
Yeah, he's literally showing you why you shouldn't take candy from strangers in and I don't know if you talked about it, but Marvel did release a 1 hour cut of
a 1 hour cut of his dance. Yeah.
There's only a little more actual dance, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there's an interview with him where he actually gets into why he danced like that and why. And he said, you know, Zemo was in a cell for 2 years.
Embarrass his friends.
Kind of how he would be. Yeah. But yeah, I love seeing Sam being a counselor and actually leaning into that aspect of him, like trying to get to, I can't remember her name, but the Flag Smashers leader.
Carly.
And yeah,
Carly.
And how well he works in that. It shows he's a very different character than Steve, where Winter Soldier, he fights like Steve. He's brute force, hopefully some leadership, but Sam has a very different way of approaching things, and I like seeing that. And I love the consistency of Zemo deciding not to have the super soldier formula, because that seemed like a scene that in a lesser show he just would have taken it so that he could equalize the odds. And I like that Sam straight up doesn't want it, because I wouldn't be worried if Sam had the super soldier formula, but I like that he straight up says, you know, draws the line and says, nope, this is not something I'm going to do.
Definitely.
Before we move on, can I just say, although we are watching this show, I would just be fine with a show that's just, you know, Falcon, Winter Soldier, and Zemo. Just do it. I mean, like, all this other stuff is fun, but I mean, I think the chemistry with, the chemistry and dynamic with Falcon and Winter Soldier was great in the movies. I think that I felt that there were pieces of it towards the beginning of this episodic show, that weren't landing for me the same way. And I don't know if Bucky or Falcon is, like, you know, I can't decide. Zemo might even be my favorite character because he's an interesting villain with depth and with complications. But you know, their back and forth in the movies was so perfect, and here it felt a little forced in some places. But I think that this episode felt better in that sense. I think that there was more of that. But yeah, I just wanted to say, I love also just the three of them. That dynamic is so much fun.
For sure. And Thom, what you were saying actually provides a great segue to the next segment, which I like to get in since we have this show debriefed. Getting into Psych Evals. So just that idea of what's happening, you know, in the heads of many of these characters. And you know, the point that you brought up was one that I was going to highlight, was just that idea of a comment that was made by one of the Flag Smasher minions. And they were talking about, like, their history with Captain America and being a fan of Captain America growing up, which has a certain irony based on what happens to them at the end. But that idea that I can believe what they said, just to paraphrase, the world is more complicated now. People are lost. Superheroes don't have the luxury of, you know, keeping their hands clean. And that plays, and they need, I think another thing that he said, they need someone who looks like them. So even though he was directing that at Carly, I feel like it, you know, absolutely encompasses why Sam is the right candidate to continue the legacy of Captain America, and how throughout many of these episodes, they found different ways of juxtaposing the approach that Sam uses and the approach that Walker uses. And even in this introduction, Walker, you know, talked about, or his friend talked about, listen, man, like, you know, now that you're Captain America, you know, you can't just solve things by, you know, punching things. That was like a big comment that, like, stuck in my head. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, of course, that's going to come into play later, of course. But just that idea of, just like you were saying, Thom, the idea of taking that pacifist or that more thoughtful approach to responding to problems versus the easy force first approach that you have, where it, just like that character was saying, it is a more complicated world. It was not a time where things are very much black and white. There's a lot of gray that you have to navigate through. So with that being said, what are your thoughts on how this show thus far, with the episodes that we've seen, has tackled that idea of, there are characters that function in the gray. I mean, we're seeing it with Carly, we're seeing it with Zemo, who initially seemed, far more nefarious than perhaps his intentions or his values would have him to be.
Well, as far as the speech in the graveyard was interesting because I think it was a meta commentary on a couple different levels.
Yes.
Because having people who look like you is awesome. Having characters who get their hands dirty and stay in the gray, I think is kind of, as a Superman fan, is a meta commentary on why Captain America is awesome and that characters don't need to be like that. Because one of the dings on Superman for the longest time is that he's boring and too straight-laced, and yet Steve Rogers, Captain America, is one of the most popular characters in the Marvel Universe, and he's boring and straight-laced. I think it's still possible to be that character, even as much as Steve had some of his sharper edges sanded off by the end of Endgame. We see him swear, things like that. I think those, you can move the game by inches, but Steve, it's that Bendis speech about you be the tree, you stand and say, no, you move. I like the world also still needs the clear-cut heroes who are doing the right thing. And I think that's a good place for Sam to be, even though he's working as a freelancer right now and because he's away from those regulations. So I like that. I like how they're writing John Walker because he doesn't feel like he's a member of the Evil League of Evil. And I think that's a thing that they can do really easily. Yeah. Like, he seems like a good, he's trying to do the right thing. I don't know how good a person he is, but he's damaged by what he did. Like, he's not, you see that he's not necessarily thoughtful. He's certainly impatient and wants to take care of the situation, but he's also, he's not doing it because he just wants to beat people up. He's not doing it because he's a bad person who got it. He's doing it because he's a good soldier who thinks he's doing what's right and trying to do it in the way that he thinks is, he's wrong, but he's coming from a good place. You see kind of the same thing happening with Zemo, because I'm kind of, weird about saying a guy who kills a bunch of people is coming from the right place, but his motivations are crystal clear. Like, you see how he's getting where he's getting, and that makes him, as opposed to dealing with Loki, who will turn on you, because that's what Loki does. The Baron Zemo can work because you know what he's going for, and as long as your goals are aligned with his, he will work with you. I really like the scene where, after he finds out where the funeral is, you think that it's played almost like he's going to keep this information completely for himself. And then what he does is he just leverages it so they don't give him up. But he doesn't hide the fact that he knows where the funeral is once they get out of there. He's like, no, this is where the funeral is, but I'm not telling you because I don't want you turning me over to the Dora Milaje.
For sure.
Yeah, I one of the things that's interesting about this show is one of the most important characters isn't here, because Captain America informs the entirety of the show. He is integral to both of the main characters and the way that they are, as also the new main character, John Walker, not on the title, but still very important. And I think that people who, fought with Captain America is one category that Falcon and Winter Soldier both fall into. And I don't think that you need to have fought with Captain America to understand the value of his values, the value of his approaches. But I think that Sam, while being 100% his own character and a lot of that coming from his counseling and his own motivations, there's a reason that he and Captain America teamed up in the first place. They shared some, values already. They became friendly. When Captain America came to him and was like, I know this is kind of above your pay grade. And he was like, nope, I've got experience. Here's how I can use it. Captain America's calling on, but he also was okay with, both thinking for himself and following the lead of the Cap, and Bucky is a totally different story, of course, but I just think it's interesting the way that they're doing the people who did work with Cap and know him and everything, versus John Walker, who is sort of respects Captain America, but doesn't actually seem to. I agree with Thom that he's might be coming from a good place, but I a little bit disagree in the sense that he doesn't seem to struggle with how to be Captain America as much as I would hope that someone who suddenly becomes the new Captain America would. I mean, I know that, you know, they have the previous episode where he's out on the football field and people are interviewing him and he's kind of like, well, I guess this is part of the job. And Cap did that too in the beginning, back in World War II. But the lack of stopping to think about how you're working, how you're doing things, what your priorities are, and how you should be functioning as Captain America is not ideal. And I don't know where the best place to talk about this is, but also having just rewatched some of the MCU Steve Rogers stuff, his fighting style, while very in your face and stuff, is so elegant. If you look at the first couple of scenes in the first couple of Captain America, the latter Captain America movies, once he's been Cap for a while, those scenes are freaking impressive. They're so amazing. He is just a machine in a good way, and he's so one with the shield and whatever. And then when he and Bucky are using the shield together, what's that? Oh, Thom had an Alexa moment, I guess. And when he and Bucky are using the shield together in Civil War, when they're fighting Tony, sadly, towards the end, I mean, it's just so amazing. And Walker just doesn't have that. So, I mean, it's interesting. I know I'm getting a little off the Psych Evals into their fighting styles, but
no, you're fine.
Why didn't he sit down and try to figure out a little more if he should be Captain America and what kind of Captain America he was going to be? And if he did sit down and do that, and this was the result, then I don't think he should be Captain America. He should be something else. But so I know that he's got his issues and his PTSD, and all of that. I do appreciate that he's not totally douchey. Like in the first episode that you see him, he kind of feels like it, and then you get more later. And I do appreciate his relationship with Battlestar and all of that. But I find that whole thing a little bit frustrating from the Psych standpoint. Like, why didn't he do a little soul searching before becoming Captain America? So I don't know. I had some issues with that. I'm sure I have more to say, but I've been going on. So.
No, you're fine. And it's funny you brought that up of like the different styles. I guess my idea when I'm thinking of those different styles is, Sorry. So what I'm thinking about when you bring up the different styles is, I feel it does actually play into the psyche, because if we're thinking about Steve Rogers and him thinking of himself more as a defender, more as someone who is on the offensive all the time, then that's going to also play into how you fight as well. So if much of what he's doing is just trying to dismantle somebody and not necessarily kill them, he's going to find ulterior ways of trying to dismantle someone. And by virtue of that, it looks more like fluid and less to the point. And if you're someone who is always on the offensive, you don't care about, being, fluid and fancy. You're just going to get to the point and get right, and get right in there and take the person out.
Those scenes where on the, what was that in Winter Soldier, wasn't it? Or where he's on the pirate captured ship in the beginning and he's just laying everybody out. It's just so gorgeous. Yeah. So I agree with you. I think that's a good point. He is like taking people out, but they're not dead. They're unconscious. They're disabled. They're tied up. They're something, So, I mean, I think that you're right. And at the same time, like Bucky does have, I mean, he doesn't fight exactly like Captain America, in my opinion. He has his own style. It's reminiscent to some extent, and Bucky's used to using the shield, so he has that too. But he's much more John Walker in certain ways. He's a more straightforward fighter, and like that makes sense because he was also the Winter Soldier for many years, and he was trained that way and everything. But still, his style is tempered by the desire to not harm, unnecessarily, and is tempered, I assume, by working with Cap for many years, and is tempered by, his own character, while I do think inevitably, I assume Falcon is going to end up being the new Captain America, because it shouldn't be John Walker. Bucky's not a terrible candidate. I think he has way too much emotional damage for him to feel like he could, or for anyone to feel safe with him doing it. But if he was sent to my rescue, I'd be like, yeah, I trust you to try your best to try and get me out of this without, going crazy, killing people, etc. Whereas, of course, the crushing image of, John Walker with the bloody shield, which is, as I said, I've been rewatching stuff, like in Civil War, when Steve drives the shield into Iron Man's arc reactor chest plate and then, stops. And you see that he's, in his face, it's like, all right, I got it done. This is what I needed to do. I needed to disable Tony so he stops fighting with me because, I have to protect Bucky, but I don't want to harm Tony, and I feel bad about this whole thing. And, obviously in this scene in Falcon and Winter Soldier, Walker just loses it, as you said, in the end. And I think their fighting styles are very different. I think the psyches behind them are really tied into that. So you're 100% right, Brandon.
Cool beans. And Thom, your thoughts on that. And Thom, your thoughts on that.
I would like to see a little more. They're missing out on some of the world building. John Walker seems like exactly the kind of person who would be Captain America if he was asked, where Steve was actually trying to become a super soldier. We saw him try to get into that program over and over and lie and even say he was from New Jersey to try to make it happen. And John Walker...
Don't diss Jersey.
Yeah. John Walker seems like the kind of person who, on paper, looks like he should be Captain America. And if he's asked, he's going to do it because he thinks it's the right thing to do. He's not the guy who should be Captain America. But he's still thinking like a soldier.
It's like politicians.
Yeah, he's still thinking like a soldier. He's very much a blunt instrument. Like Bucky's fighting style is a lot more T-1000 from Terminator 2. Like all he does is think about how to fight. That's how he was trained. John Walker is a lot more Jason Bourne. Like everything in the room is a weapon. Like all he's trying to do is accomplish the objective, and he's not worried about how it goes. And Sam is going to be a lot more graceful because he has to think in terms of air combat. And I really like how much he's able to use the Falcon suit to fight, and how like the clever ways in which he does that. I think that works really well. So I think it's interesting how they're using that to express where everybody is. The two other things that I was thinking about over the course of it, though, is one, this actually had my favorite Baron Zemo scene as a character, not as a dancer, where they're having an argument where they're very much writing-wise, they're very much turning Steve Rogers into the patron saint of the Marvel Universe. And then they're having the discussion about how the super soldier formula corrupts people. And Bucky says, Steve wasn't. Zemo says, touche. Zemo doesn't fight him on it. Zemo doesn't say Steve actually wasn't the person he was. Zemo is capable of having an intellectual discussion and ceding ground if he's wrong, which is really interesting for a villain. And also, I worry a little bit that Sharon...
Yeah. I like that nuance.
And I'm also still, the more I think about it, a little worried about Sharon Carter getting the short end of the stick again. Because the more I try to build out what her world is, if the Flag Smashers are fighting for a world where people, I'm not sure they were going for this. This is how I read it. The scene where they're talking on the balcony, and basically it sounds like the Israelis and the Palestinians had gotten together because they needed each other, and then when people came back, they went back to their separate ways. If Sharon wasn't blipped out with everybody else, I have a hard time believing that just because she stole Cap's shield in that 5-year gap, they wouldn't bring her back in. So it's weird how much she's being punished for what she did in Civil War and what they're doing to try to bring her back in. I feel like there should be there.
But is she? It's unclear to me what's going on with Karen. That's part of my problem with all of that. I mean, some of that is intentional, but some of it is kind of not. So, or it's not being done well.
It's unclear if there's a lot more to her story. If she is a double agent, or she's set up this way because Tony Stark started paying her to do stuff that they couldn't do. I get that, but the way she has described it to Sam and the way Sam is hearing it is, I've been on the run being a bad guy, stealing stuff, and getting a really cool apartment because I broke you guys out, and then I had to go on the run, and I've never been able to come back. Where Steve was able to come back, you know, all the Avengers who were on the run in Infinity War came back. Like, everybody seemed to be forgiven except for Sharon, and that's either a plot convenience.
I mean, that's why I assumed that something else is going on. But
yeah, and I'm hoping
it's
because
very,
there's been enough. As much as I enjoy the show, and I love every episode I watch, there's a point where I walk away where there are a lot more edges that don't fit together. So there have been enough things that haven't fit together well where I'm hoping they fix that or address that, but I'm not completely confident that they will, the way that I would be in other things.
No, I get you. I get you for sure.
Agreed. Yeah, that's one of the things that I was having problems with, is the disjointedness and the little pieces not quite feeling like they fit together. And also, I just want to agree that I love Falcon's fighting style too. It's like very beautiful and also effective, and I love it so much. Which is totally a Psych Eval. Obviously, I'm on topic here. We've totally got into like, let's just talk about how they fight. But it is a really fun part of the watching the shows. So anyway, but yeah, Falcon's pretty cool in the way that he can use the wings to do. I love it when he does the things where he like goes backwards and does something and then like makes it into something more.
No, I got you. He definitely has a fighting style for sure with his wings. Like, his wings are its own fighting style. So him utilizing those are its own fighting style for sure, which makes him different from everybody else. I'm gonna bring up a couple of comments here. Thanks, Josh, for popping in. Josh popped in and said, I agree with Emily. So the point that was being made earlier, and also talking about as well as and this was a comment that we brought earlier. So shout out to Josh, because we were discussing in a prior episode and in a prior Psych Eval, talking about John Walker, and the idea that one thing that I came up with is, with the MCU, they very much, even if they don't follow things to a T, they very much follow the spirit of a character's arc a lot of times. So, give me like an example with John Walker, the various aliases that he's had over the course of his arc. He starts off as Super Patriot, he becomes Captain America, he also becomes US Agent, even though in the comics, if I recall correctly, he already has a super soldier serum prior to becoming Captain America. It doesn't happen until this episode after he's already after he's coronated as the new Captain America. And so, my argument was, well, even though it didn't happen to a T, in spirit, it still happened, because in essence, based on all these accolades and awards that he's won as a soldier, he is a super patriot in essence, in terms of the accomplishments that he's had. And then he gets coronated as Captain America, and because he gets disillusioned or is afraid of that idea of losing, because up to this point he seems to win at everything, he actually gets that moniker of US Agent. It looks like I lost him there just for a second. She should be back, but yeah, just that idea I found interesting. But to talk further about Walker, one thing that I feel that finally came to a head in this episode is that idea of Walker's ego, where there are many times where he tries to make an effort of trying to get back into the good graces of Team Falcon and with everyone, where he's right there, and then something happens where he just says the wrong thing or does the wrong thing. Like if I'm thinking of like in that initial instance, okay, looks like Emily's back. Hey, lost you for a second. Welcome back.
Internet went out, but so I missed
no worries.
Minutes.
No worries, but no, you actually, it's perfect timing. I was just talking about one thing that came to mind is the ego of John Walker and how he's so accustomed to winning at everything and being successful at everything. And this arc for him is going to be about him finally coming to terms with losing and not being successful at something, and what that does to someone when you're not successful at something, and how scary that can be when someone is used to winning all the time and they finally have to take an L for once. So,
nobody likes that.
Finally had to take that L. So, in this episode, up to this point, it finally, like I was telling Thom, it finally came to a head where, his ego really gets the best of him. And there are many instances over the course of the episode since his introduction where he has, meant well, and sometimes he just does something or says something that, just sends him over the edge. Like one time that makes me think about that is when he tries to help Bucky and Sam, and you can tell that he's like really trying to be helpful. And then he finally says, well, I want to, learn the most from Cap's sidekick. And just the fact that he said like just that little dig that he didn't even really consider a dig. It's like completely unbeknownst to him, completely oblivious. He loses Sam in essence. And then we have a similar instance of that, which I want to get into with the big action sequence where it happens with the Dora Milaje. I was like, oh, dude, like they're not Sam. They're not going to just say like, just walk away. Like they're going to let you have it, which they did. So in talking about
scene.
in talking about that moment, what are your thoughts on that sequence of, the big show out of the Dora Milaje and what they're capable of?
I liked seeing that they were very tactical in who they were fighting, because the fight goes on for like a minute and then you see that they are not touching Sam and Bucky. And I thought that was interesting because like Sam and Bucky know not to engage, but everybody else is having that fight. You do see him get him, his butt handed to him in a way that he's not expecting. What I thought was something you said reminded me of it. The scene that they have in the graveyard about what kind of hero you need and one who can operate in the gray areas. The scene with John and Battlestar in the cafe where they're talking about what they did to get their awards, and not what they did. It's what actions they performed that wound up getting their award, because they weren't striving for them. They were just awarded them.
Right.
John Walker is the hero that the Flag Smashers are looking for. They're looking for a guy who will get his hands dirty and work in the gray area, and we're seeing that is not necessarily what you want. And yeah, I've been really impressed with how they're handling him for the most part. I mean, the headaches aside, he becomes Captain America, and you see his reaction of like, I don't know why you guys are mad at me. Like, you didn't
right, exactly, right.
Yeah. I'm just trying to help. He's not built for it. He's in a role that he doesn't fit. And it's where you see those gaps where he's getting, I don't know how much that it's ego. I mean, I'm sure it is because he thinks he should be better. It's when he doesn't feel he's being afforded the respect that he deserves as Captain America. Like, he feels like he should be in charge of the situation, and he's not dealing well with that. And he's also, the thing that the Dora Milaje scene does a really good job of is it shows how desperate he is to take the super soldier formula, because he has that line where he says, they were just super soldiers. They were super soldiers. Yeah.
And then I was going to say, I'll hop in just a second. That moment where like they used the shield better than he did. Like, I got a kick out of that. Where like they just like with Cap, like they flipped the shield. I was like, oh, it's like just like visual thing where just like completely emasculated of John Walker. But go ahead.
And I don't know if they meant this. I'd be interested to see how they play with it. But it seems like Walker was willing to leave the shield behind in a way that nobody else would. Like, the shield became a hindrance and he was willing to go on from it. I almost thought the way that scene was playing out that he's going to leave the shield and Sam or Bucky were going to take it. And I think it's interesting to see that as much as this shield is a symbol, is he seeing it the same way, or is he seeing it as a weapon, which is, how he uses it.
For sure. I'm sorry, Emma. Looked like you had some thoughts. I would agree and disagree that for what you were saying that is semblance of ego because he's so, but agree to disagree. But Em, go ahead.
Look, this is why I love these conversations, because sometimes I'm sitting there going, why do I feel this way? What am I thinking about this? This is why I like talking to you and Thom and people. And like, we were having a conversation after the last, not this one, but episode 3, about the frustration with the kind of undefined what's going on with the Flag Smashers and all that. But what made me go like this was I'm sitting here and I'm like, I just really don't like John Walker way more than Thom, feels about. I really don't like. I can see what they're doing with him, but why do I really have this visceral reaction against John Walker? And Thom said, "You're absolutely right, Thom. Like when he reacts like that, it's because he's like not getting the respect that he deserves, or he thinks he deserves." One of the things I really can't stand about literal just people in this world is when they have not earned respect and they think they deserve it. It is 100% entitlement. Thank you, Brandon. So I'm sitting here and, look, I have gone off about entitlement before and people who demand respect when they don't deserve it. But sometimes it's hard to place why you're feeling like that about something. That is how I feel about John Walker. He feels entitled. He's got arrogance, even though I recognize they're playing it like, well, who else is going to do it? My country is calling on me. I'll take this job. But at the same time, he's like, well, now I'm Captain America and I've got the shield and it's my turn and all this stuff. And it's not his turn. He has to earn respect. And he's not earning my respect in this show. I mean, like, for the most part, he's messing up. He's being an arrogant dick. And he's trying, but his friend, Battlestar Lamar, right? His friend is way better. He could have been the new Captain America, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe he didn't run as fast in the trials of whatever. But that is why I don't really like John Walker at all. So thank you to both of you for spurring the words to, I was like, why do I hate him so much? Because entitled.
I was gonna say, to be fair to what you were saying, I absolutely agree because that whole instance of him dying, I was like, okay, gloves are off, all bets are off. He doesn't have anyone to talk him down anymore. Like, that's it. Like, because up to this point, like, he was the voice of reason. Like, hey, listen, like maybe we should listen to what Sam has to say. Like, let's try this and see if it works. Like, you won't have to do anything. So like, I do like that. Yeah. He was the conscience, and now without that.
Yeah, and I mean, not to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Thom.
Oh, I was just going to say, I forget the actor's name, Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn's son, who's playing
Wyatt.
Wyatt. I like that he's playing him entitled, because I think, Emily, that's a great point. He's definitely acting entitled, even when they're not writing him entitled. And it's such a good performance to take it, because he's dislikable, but it's hard to pin down exactly why he's dislikable, what things are bothering you about him. And it's such an earnest performance that I think it's really making it feel better and putting shades in a character who, from the moment you see, you're supposed to dislike. The first episode we see him, he's doing everything he should be, but you still get that smarmy feeling off of him.
Yes.
And that's the performance. I'm sure some of it's in the writing, but a lot of it is just he's adding to that performance, to giving you a character who you dislike and you're not entirely sure why.
And it's,
for sure.
I mean, that's accurate. The actor is doing a great job. And yeah, that's exactly it. I knew I didn't like him, and I knew I knew some of the reasons why, like this action, that action, but it does tie it all together to be like, this is what's going on under the surface. And not to too much bring gender into it, but as a woman in society, I am used to people coming at me entitled without necessarily deserving the respect they're demanding. I mean, in all walks of life, there are people I meet, and perhaps we all do in our, our various roles. I'm sure everyone does, but I do feel like a lot of the time we get a lot of it, as a woman, I get a lot of it from people, especially men, who are just like, well, this is how I expect you to be around me. And it's like, why? Why do you expect that? I don't expect that. In my head, you don't look like that at all. So what are you doing here? And I think Thom is right, and you're right, Brandon, that but especially the thing that Thom was saying, I'm pointing the wrong way because where are our cameras? Thom was saying about, you know, like he plays it really earnestly, and the actor is doing a good job, and also even the costume in like the first episode, his face looks like frustratingly smarmy.
Yeah.
And I read somewhere that they changed or Thom, did you tell me this? I thought I read it.
Yeah, they moved the eyes down and brought up the chin, so he
looks more like, you know,
it gives him a much more punchable face.
Yeah, but so I think they're doing a good job. Like, obviously, as our commenter said about, it's hard to dislike Zemo. You know, like Zemo, the actor Daniel Bruhl, is it? I think. You know, he's doing a great job of making Zemo a charming villain, and Wyatt is doing a great job of making Walker a dislikable hero. You know, like it's like, I mean, he's not a hero in my view. But, and not to disparage what his service may have been as a soldier. Like, I'm not saying he wasn't an effective and dedicated soldier. But when you become Captain America, you don't deserve respect. You have to earn respect, because it's not just being a soldier, as Brandon was saying. I think that's, Brandon, you were saying that. So yeah, I have many feels about John Walker and how much I don't feel for him. But also, I'm really interested to see where he goes from here, because whatever ideals he may have been trying to have, his friend is dead and he murdered somebody. Which, speaking of Easter eggs, Brandon, he murdered somebody who was a fan of Captain America when he was a kid. So that's
the irony. Yep, that irony. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, like, what is he going to... Everybody knows it. The world knows it. What are the consequences going to be for him? He may become a more interesting character to me because of this, even though, of course, it's a horrible action. So I'm interested to see where that goes.
For sure. I feel like that's a great segue into theories. But before I do that, I just wanted to clarify, when I was talking about the functioning in the gray, not necessarily being okay with the action, I guess is where I was coming from, is just the idea that understanding, you know, more than one perspective, and knowing all the various angles that come into play when dealing with the situation, I feel is more in line with Wilson. So I agree with you, you know, Thom, of what you were saying with having that fortitude of knowing what's right and wrong, but also understanding, you know, the complicated circumstances that can come into play that shape the decisions that people make, and being understanding and having empathy for that, versus just saying, okay, it's just this way and it's just this way, versus understanding like, okay, it's this way because of X, Y, and Z, or it's this way because of X, Y, and Z. Switching gears. Yes, you want to say something, Em? Sorry.
I was just thinking about that in the sense that I agree with you 100%. And Sam is a great character for looking at that, because, you know, like Steve, when he came back, he had old Peggy Carter, but he really didn't have a lot of connections to the world at the point where he came back. Whereas Sam has his sister and her 2 sons. They've got their own personal problems. Now she's being threatened because of his work. You know, so there's a lot of difficulties that put him into situations where he's got to look at the angles. And, you know, as you were saying, or Thom was saying, you know, as a grief counselor, or not grief, a PTSD counselor and a, you know, support counselor, he's already trained to look at different angles. But then, of course, now he's being put in these situations where he's got that perspective he needs to take. And I do think that it's really interesting just to look at, how he deals with the gray areas. I also, one of the things that I find a little bit frustrating about this show is the lack of delineation for alliances, which is one of the gray areas that you're talking about, really, is like from episode 1 through, we're only on number 4, like they just move fluidly from like, we're going to do this now, we're going to work with these people, then we're going to break Zemo out and work with him, then we're going to do this, then Sharon Carter shows up. Part of that I don't love, because it's a little bit of the disjointedness for me, is like, what are the motivations behind why you're so okay with this? And they talk about it with Zemo a little bit, but it's weirdly, it's interesting because it shows some of those gray areas, and it's also a little bit, it feels a little bit disjointed. You know, now Wakanda's coming in, now this is going on. So yeah, but I think Sam is doing the best job of dealing with that, both internally and externally, or of handling, working on figuring out that stuff. Bucky's not bad, but he's also backing up Sam on a lot of these plays. Like Sam goes in to talk to Carly, and Bucky's sitting at the door like, I am gonna, support him in this. So I do think that Sam has a good way of being able to see, I know I'm calling them angles, gray areas, same kind of thing, but angle seems a little more calculating, but it is, it's also effective. So anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And, to your point, it goes back to what I was saying of, I'm so used to always saying that they're not pacing it enough and cutting enough, but one can argue now that you can actually have more episodes than the 6-episode arc that they are going with. A lot of times with many of these series,
I'd watch this forever. I'd watch it forever.
And that was one. That's one.
Well, if it's,
I was going to say, that's one complaint that I had of like the Netflix shows. Don't get me wrong. Like, I like most of those shows. I think you guys have a hint of which one I do not like, that many people do not like. But like Daredevil or what is it? Daredevil or Jessica Jones or even what is it? Not Iron Fist, but
Luke Cage.
Luke Cage, thank you. With a lot of those shows, even though they have 10-episode arcs, essentially, one of my issues is that they could have been 8 episodes. There were a couple of episodes in some of those seasons that were very much filler, and I felt was unnecessary and didn't really add much to the plot moving forward.
The only reason why I say that, in my opinion, but
I'm saying Jessica Jones. I'm saying Jessica Jones because I had an issue with that whole subplot with her and Purple Man, where they had the house and they like were living together, and like that part, like I was like, okay, are you gonna get rid of them or not get rid of them? Like I was over that.
Was good because it revisited her trauma. I like that. I think of that show in my head as crunchy. There's a lot to get into there. There's a lot. I know that's a weird idea.
And even with the mom, the second season with the mom. Sorry, spoilers, guys, but it's been out for a while. But yeah, like I had an issue. I felt like that dragged on more than it needed to. Her history with the mom.
Yeah, I could talk about this for days, but I think the thing that the Disney Plus shows are doing that the Netflix shows didn't do is that the Marvel ones know they want to be a long movie, and the Netflix shows, especially because you can watch them in bursts, they don't work as TV shows the way TV shows do. Because things like when I was watching Daredevil, I know people said it slowed down, and I think the episode they thought slowed down was the Kingpin centric episode, where if you're binge watching them, if you're binge watching it, there's more of a tendency to go, but this doesn't advance the bigger plot. Why are we doing this? Whereas if you're watching a TV show, you get those change of pace ones that feel good. The example I always use is that Supernatural would do 22 episodes, and the episode where they're in the alternate reality where they're working in the office in the 4th season.
I love those.
It's a great episode, but you would not get that if it were a 13-episode Netflix series because it doesn't advance the plot enough. So the Disney Plus shows are very much structured like a movie, and I think because of that, they're a lot tighter. If this were a Netflix show, the next episode we get will be entirely a flashback about John Walker. But I don't think we're going to see that. I think it's going to be paced much more like a movie, and I think it's kind of weird with the weekly release schedule because, like, I watch stuff on Apple TV, and that drops once a week, and that feels a lot more like I'm watching TV. I mean, that's how WandaVision was. WandaVision felt very episodic. This is much more cinematic, and it's just interesting to see. Like, I think I'm getting more frustrated with Winter Soldier because I want to watch it as a TV show, but I'm watching a movie. Whereas, I mean, I was frustrated with WandaVision for a couple different reasons, but that very much felt like a TV show. Like, it was exactly, that chapter format was what that story needed.
Cool.
And now I just want to talk about the episode of Supernatural where they go to a supernatural convention. I love it so much. I love it when they jump the shark and they do those crazy things. But anyway, I also agree with Thom.
Nice. All right. So in our next talking points of theories and what ifs, I know we were talking about like the fate of Walker, and what may become of that. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because like I was saying at the top, we have that juxtaposition of what is it, the GRC and what they're about, and what their public face is versus what they actually do. And who knows, they may try to shape that in some type of way. I have no proof of this, but they may try to reshape that in some type of way using the news cycle to make it seem like a positive thing versus a negative thing. That's one theory that may come to be. But what are your thoughts on his eventual his progression as a character? I do have some more theories, but I want to ask you guys.
Sorry, go ahead, Thom.
Oh yeah, sorry. As far as John Walker, I think he's going to live at the end of this. I think he might become Nomad. And I think Bucky is going to stick up for him, because Bucky was a tool that was damaged and had to find a way back. And I think that's going to be how they let him off the hook, as it were. Like he's going to have to go on a redemptive arc, and as opposed to WandaVision, I very much feel like I will see more seasons of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And I don't think Sam is going to become Captain America. I think Sam is going to have the shield. Because I think they're going to make the point that nobody can be Captain America, and trying to replace him is going so blazingly wrong right now that you don't want to do that. But the symbol needs to survive, even if the role of Captain America doesn't. And then they don't have to change the name of the TV show.
I actually agree on that. I didn't mean that I thought he was going to be new Captain America. I thought he was going to take up the shield at the end. I agree on that one. Yeah, with Walker, I mean, I don't want to see him get off easy right now. But clearly, I have issues with Walker, obviously. But I do think that he'll have a redemptive arc. In the comics, he antagonized Captain America for a while. He tried to be like, look at me, I'm the new, better model. And obviously, they're pulling some of that here. Depending how many seasons they intend to do, or what we might, how long we're going to see this stuff going on. Maybe he becomes a villain long enough.
There a second. Okay, go ahead. You froze there for a second, but what were you saying?
Yeah. If the show goes long enough, I could see him being redeemed. But I think it would be interesting to see him become the villain for a while. And I assume that may be a way they go for some of this season, but as it's not super, super long, yeah, maybe that's where they're going to take him. I kind of would like to see that. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but that's a possible theory of mine.
Okay,
I could see him being Baron Zemo next season, and Baron Zemo being the villain next season.
Okay, fair enough. So one thing that I go into that theory now, I think I might double down on it, but I could very well be wrong. We'll see what happens. But in thinking of that arc of Super Patriot and Captain America, one thing that I've noticed throughout all of the media of MCU thus far is that now that the Avengers are dismantled, it seems like we are starting to see chess pieces fall into place of different teams being formed and assembled, so to speak. And the teams that come to mind, I'm thinking of Young Avengers, with all the characters that are in place there, where we have them popping up in different movies and potential, Disney Plus shows, and how they may potentially be brought together as a team. I mean, we have Stature on the way, if I recall, and the new Ant-Man movie that's still coming. We have the Hawkeye series where Kate Bishop is coming. We have Patriot, the grandson of, I believe that's his name, Patriot, grandson of Isaiah, who was a member. We have Wanda's twins, brain farting.
Oh,
Wiccan and Speed. Wiccan and Speed, yes. So I mean, you have that going on, but I feel, and it's again, I know a lot of people are saying that what's her name, Sharon may potentially be the power broker, but I don't think that she's a power broker. I think that they're doing that as a red herring, and that she may potentially, like, even though she's been doing all these shadowy things, I feel like if you made her the power broker, like that would make her a far darker character. And, you know, a lot of times with many of these characters, or what it seems like with many of these characters, is that going back to that theme of acting in the gray, is that they want to be able to give them that moment of redemption. So like, I feel like they're trying to still keep her in a space where she can still do, you know, great things before she had before she was on the run and in Madripoor doing these shadowy things. Or she may not very well be doing shadowy things. There may be something else at play that we are just not aware of or cognizant of.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's that. Go ahead.
I think she's going to become Mockingbird. Even though we've kind of seen Mockingbird in the S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show, I don't think the Disney Plus show is.
But they don't count it.
Exactly.
So that's fair.
So, I mean, she's a blonde S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who uses fighting staves. And since they're not going to give her the Agent 13 storyline because they gave that back to Peggy, I think you can see a through line where they just, and we don't need to see Bobby Chase be with Hawkeye because they've gone in a different direction with that. So you could graft Mockingbird onto Sharon.
For sure. And to speak further about that, about teams, is that going to my theory about the power broker, is that I believe that it is very well Thunderbolt Ross. I very much believe that it's him. The only reason why I say that is because up to this point, Ross.
General
okay.
Ross.
Yeah. Sorry. So no, I very much believe that it is General Ross. And my only theory to that is that in thinking about, you know, how he was in Civil War, and, you know, his perspective with superheroes, and then what we saw in WandaVision, where we found out how much, I'm brain farting on the guy's name, but he was the leader of SWORD, how much he was, I guess, traumatized by those 5 years of everyone being dusted, and how he became more extreme. Like, he talked about how troubling that was for him. I'm feeling the same thing might have happened to General Ross, where he was already relatively an extreme person and had extreme tactics. But now that we've had that event happen, he's probably really going off the deep end and trying to form an Avengers team of his own that he can control. So, you know, we have parties or figures in place that could potentially form a Thunderbolts team or a Dark Avengers team. I know we don't really have what's his name, Green Goblin. We don't have Norman Osborn, but again, going back to what MCU does of acting within the spirit of certain things, they may very well, instead of making it confusing with so many different teams, they may try to merge having like the Dark Avengers actually be the Thunderbolts.
No, I love this theory. I hadn't actually thought that deeply about who the power broker might be, to be honest. I didn't think it was Sharon Carter. I could be wrong, but I don't feel that vibe. But it would be really interesting if it was him. And of course, it makes sense that he might be looking for, you know, more super soldiers that he can create and control, because he's got a history with that, of course, depending on what's canon and what's not. But, you know, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And now I want to see a Thunderbolts team. And so, Brandon, I hope your theory is correct.
And then I was going to say the other caveat to that is thinking of like teams and things like that. Another theory that I have, and based on what happened at the end of last episode and it happened at the top of this episode, is one thing that I had mentioned a couple of episodes ago is with Bucky in the beginning of Falcon and Winter Soldier, in his time, like you were saying, of talking about the psychiatrist and him talking about commenting on how alone he is, like he doesn't really have anyone. I feel with this series, we may have an indication of a significant other. So like whether it's Sharon, because she is acting more in the gray now, or here's another thought, it may end up being Io. Only reason why I'm saying Io as well, because thinking of another trait that the MCU has of, you know, they'll have a path of what they want to do for the next 4 or 5 years. And we've had that happen before, where something happens where they have to kind of shift gears or pivot and reshape what the MCU is going to be. Like it happened with Spider-Man. Like they weren't planning on getting Spider-Man back, and they already had a plan, but They had to reshape everything once they found out that they could use him. So in that same way, unfortunately, in the reverse, because we don't have Chadwick Boseman, unfortunately, him passing away, I feel much in what they've been doing with many of those solo adventures is that now that they have a Falcon, so to speak, in Torres. I know we didn't even talk about that, but now that they have Torres in play and can step into that role of being, the second to Sam and being his, right-hand guy, it made me think of, okay, now that they have this guy, what are they going to do with Winter Soldier? Like, what is going to give him his thing that gives him purpose? And they've been giving us hints throughout this entire series of keep calling him White Wolf. So like, I have a feeling that they may double down on that. I think initially they were just doing it as lip service and as an Easter egg, but now of the circumstance with Boseman, they may double down on that and may actually make him White Wolf and put him, root him in Wakanda with the Wakandans versus, him going on adventures with Sam. And the only reason why I say that is because now he would be rooted in Wakanda if he had a relationship with Io and had that whole history of her helping to deprogram him, and now he has something to fight for. So who knows? It's really
I would watch that series. I would totally watch that. Eventually, after we get through this series, I would watch it.
Again, no proof, guys. No proof for all of you listening out there, but if it turns out to be true, you heard it here first. So.
That's right. Yeah. No, and I was thinking because the Dora Milaje, they seem so dedicated to Wakanda, but in Black Panther, it's clear that some of them do have relationships outside of just their honor guard role. Although it does, I would assume that takes up a lot of their time. But if they were going to find somebody to be with, someone who also, has this kind of profession, so to speak, in a way, right, where it's like could be a good match. And I think that's interesting. And I think, Wakanda has obviously helped Bucky a lot. And he, whether it turns out to be this theory or a different one, I think he's looking for home in a way.
And he needs to dismantle that baggage of being Winter Soldier. So what better way of doing that by taking on a new moniker of White Wolf than being, remaining as Winter Soldier?
I like this theory.
And the only other reason why I bring that up too and watching this episode. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just on a different topic, so please finish.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, and also thinking about that doubling down is maybe because of his failure with Zemo, he may feel obligated to go back to Wakanda and make up for it and take on the mantle of White Wolf too. So there's that too. Because I have a feeling that
if we see him going into Wakanda, I would be excited about that, both because it sounds like an interesting story, and I would also be excited about that because I want to see Shuri again. So I'm assuming she'd have to be in there somewhere in that mix. Whether is she the new Black Panther? I forget. They talked about this when Chadwick Boseman sadly passed away and what they were thinking of doing, and I forget if they've announced a thing they're going to do or what they've landed on.
In typical MCU fashion, they've been kind of cryptic, or I should say, Feige has been cryptic in that they will move forward and they won't replace Boseman, and they won't do like a double like what they did with Fisher in Star Wars. Like, they won't do anything like that. He did confirm that, but. He said, we'll just use, and it's, like I said, cryptic response, we'll just use some of the inspiration that we've seen in like a lot of the books and try to, have something that makes sense. So,
yeah, no, that would be cool. On another theory or another thought of what's going to happen in the future, is Zemo eventually going to go after Winter Soldier? Because Zemo hates super soldiers and has a big beef with them, and on the other hand, is Zemo going to see Bucky, Winter Soldier, as not on par with Captain America, obviously, but I like the reference earlier where he says touche, but there's never been another Steve Rogers. But is he going to see him as worthy of the serum, so to speak, and leave him alone? Or is he going to, when they get through some of the stuff they're trying to deal with right now, is he going to make that part of his his drive. I mean, assuming he stays free for that long and no one captures him again, etc. I think he's going to be out for a while. I don't think that he's going to go back to jail anytime soon, but these are all theories. I could be wrong.
For sure.
So I'd be interested to see if that comes into play. I don't think it would come into play necessarily in the next few episodes, but if, you know, depending how long the show goes on, perhaps that's a turn that's going to happen.
Yeah. Thom, I know we've been going back.
We're getting into the point of Captain America stuff where I don't know the source material all that well. So it's nice to not have any idea who the power broker is, because I kind of don't know who the power broker is. Where if it was a character I was more familiar with, I could start seeing how they're going to graft somebody onto it in a way that they haven't yet. Yeah, I'm interested to see where they go with everything. I think Marvel doesn't know what they're going to do with Black Panther yet. Like, he continues to be a character in their lineup, essentially. I don't think they're going to use White Wolf. I just feel like they have too much capital invested in the name Winter Soldier. But I could see another character becoming White Wolf, like that's a role in Black Panther. Or White Tiger was a character for a while. Yes, I could see them going sideways with it. But I think it also.
White Tiger had a totally different history.
Oh yeah,
Unless I'm misremembering, isn't White Tiger Asian and has different background, or am I thinking of someone different?
I believe he's Hispanic.
Who am I thinking?
That's got me.
Yeah.
Who the heck am I thinking of then? I'll have to look it up. I swear I have some White Tiger comics and it was a woman. I'll have to look this up and get back to you. I don't know everything.
I do remember her as female, but outside of that, he got me.
Yeah, I think she was a woman and I thought she was Asian, but
I think she's a legacy character. I think originally it was a Hispanic guy and then it became an Asian woman. But I could be wrong. But I just feel like going that way would give you a character that you could bring into the Black Panther universe without making it another Black Panther, so that it would fit. But I don't know if what they want to do is turn Black Panther into an ensemble movie, or if they're going to have somebody that they think can replace Black Panther.
Or M'Baku takes over, because I love Winston Duke, right? Isn't that the actors? I love him. I loved him in Person of Interest. Oh my God. Could you imagine if that was the turn that Black Panther took? Was that now it's the folks who live in the mountain and revere the white gorilla who, you know, are the new protectors of Wakanda? That would be pretty interesting. It's probably not going to happen, but it's interesting.
The craziest idea I heard is bringing back Michael Jordan as a Black Panther from a different multiverse. Because the thing Chadwick Boseman had in spades was, especially, and you see it in Civil War, like he's got 20 lines, but he just exudes so much charm off every one. And Michael Jordan did that with Killmonger. Like, it's not just finding someone who can replace Black Panther as a character, but somebody who can live in the shadow of that charm and charisma that Chadwick Boseman had.
I would be 100% for them bringing back an alternate version. Killmonger was a bad dude, but I loved seeing him. So, that would be cool and interesting.
Yeah. Did we lose Brandon?
I think either Brandon's frozen or we are. I'm not sure who's the issue here, but you and I could just talk, Thom. We can just talk about how after each episode of the show, we sit down and we're like, I'm confused about this thing. Where do you think they're going to go with that? But
it's weird because for a show that was pushed back, because it was supposed to come out before WandaVision, I feel like it really just could have used one more editing pass. I mean, there's stuff that happened in this episode that if you had moved some of the John Walker stuff from this episode to episode 1 or episode 2, like you could have, if John Walker did a raid on the Flag Smashers, that would have given you a chance to deliver exposition about what the Flag Smashers are without stopping everything and saying, as you know, this is the stuff that's going on in this episode, and here we are clearly telling you what the stakes and the characters are.
Well, and at the same time, they could have done it, as you know, in like a news briefing kind of thing, where you see just like an update on what the current state of the world. Like, look, people have watched like 23 movies by now. There's a lot to remember. I have to go back and watch these movies sometimes. As someone who's watched them several times or many times, I don't know how many times I've watched Guardians of the Galaxy, But sometimes I still have to go back. It had been a while since I'd seen Winter Soldier when I went back and watched it again. And I haven't seen Endgame since it was in theaters because it's a more recent one. I haven't gone back to it. So I have to like go back and do Infinity War and Endgame again. But there's a lot going on. It would not have been a problem to have 5 minutes at the beginning or somewhere in the first episode where we just get interspersed news, you know, on what's been going on in the world. Like, as a reminder, the people went away, they came back, here's the issues that the world is dealing with now. And that would have laid a really easy foundation for the Flag Smashers. There was no reason to have confusion. There was no reason to have, like, what are their motivations? We need to wait and hear them say it themselves. It wasn't necessary to draw that out for storytelling purposes. So why not set it up at the beginning when it would have just really... I also, in rewatching some of the movies, like when they're doing Civil War and Bucky and Falcon are fighting, and then like Spider-Man does his thing, and Falcon uses Red Wing to pull Spider-Man away, and Bucky's like, you couldn't have done that sooner, and Falcon's like, I hate you, and they're both so like tired, and it's like this perfect moment of that interaction. I feel like in this show so far, the moments have almost worked, or some have worked and some have not, but I don't feel that immediate click like I have with like in the movies. So I think they're getting there, but I really would have liked it to start from the get-go to feel like that. I hope Brandon comes back. I assume people can still see it. But I mean, we can talk about this stuff for hours. We do talk about this stuff for hours.
Yeah, if anyone's in the chat, why don't you drop us a line just to let us know?
Yeah, is anybody there? Can we know what's going on? I guess we should check the host chat too to see if Brandon. Yeah. Oh, Thom, I see you were already checking on that.
Oh, I checked the host chat, but I was looking in the public chat because I'm not sure anyone can hear us.
Yeah, we'll see what's going on there. I'm not sure, but
yeah,
here's a question.
They did a lot of great action stuff to start. They dropped you in the middle of stuff, but you've got Bucky as a character who seems to have withdrawn, and that gives you an opportunity to explain things to Bucky and the audience, and they're not taking advantage of that. Like, Bucky knows a little too much for someone who isn't actually involved in this.
I would have really liked to see more of his, like they build in a little bit of his attempts at redemption and going to visit the older man. And, like I said, I like a good crunchy show. I know that's a weird episode, but it's like a feeling there's a lot to dig into. There's a lot to chew on. There's a lot of like stuff going on. And I don't mind with the MCU. There are some shows where you don't need that, but with the MCU, like speaking of person of interest, they built in a lot of really good like backstory over time, but you didn't need a lot of long drawn out thoughts about, what was going on in their heads each episode, because you got it bit by bit, and that worked for that show. But for the Marvel stuff, because we've got all of this stuff built up already, it would be great to just really delve into some of the deeper stuff that's already been laid out as a foundation, and give it more time. Not draw it out like, what is the I always forget what it's called, decompressed or the storytelling method that became a thing and then didn't become a decompress. Yeah, that's why we don't need it to be that decompressed, but we could use a little more. So
it's getting back to what the format is. I mean, this is essentially like an old 80s miniseries. Like this wants to be a movie, and if it's a movie, you can't get more of Bucky trying to redeem himself and going back. If this were a TV show, you would definitely get that. They would need to fit that in just for pacing, and also like budget doesn't seem to be an issue in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but that was a reason why you would get episodes like that Supernatural episode where they had to allocate their budget for other episodes and they needed to figure out a cheap bottle show, and that's where you got a lot of good character development. But Falcon and the Winter Soldier doesn't need to stop if it doesn't want to. So it's one of the things that's interesting going into the streaming world and seeing what happens with movie theaters post-COVID is like what becomes storytelling. Because we really, aside from British TV shows, I can't think of another format that does a 6-episode 1-hour show and that's it. Like it's very different storytelling for America, and it's going to be interesting to see where that lands and how many different flowers bloom.
That's a good point. Yeah. Oh, now I just am thinking of all the British shows. Every time we talk, I'm like, oh, and then I want to go rewatch this show, and let's talk about that show. And but yeah, I mean, yeah, I couldn't imagine a Falcon and Winter Soldier where we go off and do like a supernatural jump the shark episode. That would be really funny. Now they are doing a show that's called What If, like the What If from the comics. So we'll see a lot of zany stuff there, I assume. And I'm interested in that. I'm excited for that. But yeah, it would be. I don't know. There's some stuff I really do enjoy watching this show, and there's stuff that I really like about the show. But there are some things that I was surprised. Like WandaVision felt. I mean, it's totally unexpected kind of show compared to what the movies have been, what the other shows have been on Netflix and everything. But it worked well. Everyone's going to have a few issues with different shows, but I thought they had a vision. They had a vision. I'm a terrible person. I should go home. Wait, I am home. We're not going anywhere. I'm home. Anyway, I didn't actually mean to do that, but the creators had a vision, and they clearly built, a cohesive story. And I know that Falcon and Winter Soldier has a vision in the sense of the main conflicts, but it just doesn't feel like what is it, the Chicago bean, where it's that big shiny silver thing that's like a literal bean, and it just feels like its own little bubble thing. I apparently have a lot of weird ways of thinking about shows, but I think of shows that are like a complete arc like that as kind of like the Chicago bean or a big bubble. It's all enclosed in there. And WandaVision felt like that, and this show doesn't quite feel like that at this point. So
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
This show is a movie that wants to be a TV show. It wants to be both in a way that WandaVision wanted to be a TV show. Like WandaVision could only be told in the place that it was told, where I don't know how I don't know how Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to end, but I'm going to bet that you could compress 3 episodes and get it down to a long movie, and you would have been able to tell effectively the same story. So it's like I'm not upset by it, but it's interesting to see how people are handling that aspect of storytelling, where it doesn't have to be one thing or another.
By the way, for anyone who's watching right now, I think we're still live. I don't know what's happened to our wonderful producer and continued commentator, Brandon. But he's coming back. We lost him. I was like, did we lose you? Did you lose us? This is the beauty of modern technology, but he's coming back on. So we'll see if he has any other directions he wants us to go in. But here's while we're waiting for him, if you could pick somebody that you wanted to show up from the canon that would make sense or whatever, who do you think it would be? Like that has
in terms of Captain America, in terms of this show, or just Marvel Universe?
This show. No, whatever. But I was thinking of this show since we're talking about this one.
Okay, well, tell me yours, because I gotta think about that for a minute.
Oh, I wanted to know yours because I'm thinking about it. I think that who was the character that there was a character that was his other friend from a long time ago, Captain America's other friend. And I mean, I know this is Falcon and Winter Soldier, but I saw somebody was posting recently about it, and I read back through some of the comics pages and issues they posted where Steve had this gay friend who had been tormented and tortured under the influence of one of the supervillains. I think that storyline was really interesting, and assuming we're not going to get Steve Rogers again, because that's Chris Evans's. Maybe he'll come back for a cameo. I'd love to see more Chris Evans, but assuming we're not going to get to see him again, I don't know if they could work in a storyline that's like that. But it would be interesting to see, like Bucky. We saw Carl Lumbly as Isaiah. Hi, Brandon. We're in the midst of something. So Bucky did see one person who was still alive from his past, who wasn't Steve. But they weren't friends. I would be interested to see if if there was anyone who at this point is still alive, and there are still a few World War II soldiers who are, or people from that era who are still with us, although sadly they're getting fewer and fewer. So it would be really interesting, not necessarily that character, although of course that being a character created in the Captain America oeuvre, they could adapt something, but somebody from Bucky's past, and I confess I don't know as much about Bucky separated from Captain America at the time of World War II to have a specific Bucky character in mind, which is why I was thinking of, I'm blanking on his name right now, but the friend of Steve's who he does know over the years when he comes back. So I think it could be interesting to see someone from Bucky's past who's not an adversary, who's not Cap, but who's also not an adversary, and that could be interesting. Brandon, we were just talking.
Emily froze.
Oh boy! But no, what are we talking about? Go ahead. I'm here.
From Bucky's past when he was in World War II come through and not be an adversarial character. Thom, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, I would I'm not deep into Captain America, and there's a lot of stuff that I think because they told it in movies that you're not going to be able to get into. I actually have this pet theory that we're actually going to see Steve on the moon at some point. But I would like to see Rick Jones and the Teen Brigade brought in.
Yes. Yeah.
Because Rick kind of filled in for Bucky for a while. But I would that Steve is actually on
what's
the
your
moon,
pet theory,
that
Thom?
We're going to see Chris Evans.
Yeah, because they allude to it
next
in the
week
beginning,
in a moon base. Because that. Yeah.
I do want to see Chris Evans in a moon base or anywhere else, let's be honest.
But I would like to see kind of a democratization of the superhero setup, because I don't know why there aren't Avengers. It seems like a really good program, and there's at least 6 characters. I think that could still be. I mean, I guess you don't have Vision and Scarlet Witch, but you have Winter Soldier and you have Falcon, and maybe that's not enough. But the idea of taking the Teen Brigade, which was a bunch of people who had ham radios and talked to each other, and turning them into an internet thing. There was an arc in Captain America where there was a hotline where he would answer. And I could see Falcon and Winter Soldier becoming a road movie with the two of them going around, kind of Green Lantern, Green Arrow, hard traveling heroes way, being told by people where to go and what stuff to deal with on a very ground level. That could be interesting.
This could be the seed that builds a new Avengers if they wanted to do something like that. I don't know if they're going in that direction, but
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I feel like the MCU just kind of pushes off because they don't know what they want to do with it. I mean, I think that was one of the biggest problems with S.H.I.E.L.D. There were a lot of problems with S.H.I.E.L.D., but one of the biggest was that in a world where Marvel is this successful, I mean, they're at Pixar level for me where I don't worry about the next movie coming out because I've liked all 20 of them. You got to prove to me you're going to screw up. DC has to prove to me I'm going to like its next movie. But if, we live in a world where Squirrel Girl could totally have her own movie. And at that point, what character do you want to burn off in the TV show? Yeah.
I want Squirrel Girl.
So all of those are terrific theories, guys. So with that being said, I feel like that's a great point to close off. But again, I want to thank you guys.
That's a great point.
Squirrel Girl, there you go. I want to thank you guys for coming on and talking about this episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But before I let you guys go, can you guys each tell folks where they can find you?
Thom, go ahead.
You can find me at patreon.com/Thom Zahler. That's where I'm doing Love and Capes in the time of COVID. I'm doing more Love and Capes. I still have stuff up on Webtoon, and the Ringo Awards are up, ringoawards.com, and I'm a humor comic book and a freelancer in a burning market. So getting a little bit of notice would be great. So if you're so inclined to vote, please think of that. Love and Capes.
Cool beans. M?
Excellent. I am pretty much everywhere as at the Emily ESSC. There's my handle, Twitter, Instagram. My website is theemilyessc.com. It needs a little overhaul, but I'm working on some new stuff because the books are here. This is the first, The Underfoot, The Mighty Deep, which came out a couple of years ago, and it was a Ringo Award nominated Best Kids Comic or Graphic Novel. I think it's appropriate for everyone, age 7 to any age of adult, because it's a lot of fun. We love writing it, so obviously, hopefully other adults will love reading it. This is the new one. It's coming out. This is a pre-edition. It's coming out April 20th, and you can find them at your local comic shop or your indie bookstore, or if you can't do that, they're on Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble. But we will have, I'm going to put up on my website, because we can't go anywhere right now, or for a little while longer, hopefully only a little while longer, we're going to have signed book plates, signed by me and Thom, who is the letterer on the book, and my co-writer Ben Fisher, and our artist Michelle Wen. So there should be information about that coming up on the website soon. And yeah, I do the American Gods. I did a season 3 episode by episode recap that's on Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And tonight at 6 p.m., it's not a live one. We pre-recorded, and we did have a few little recording issues, so we apologize for any quality. But I have an exclusive interview with Yetide Badaki, who plays Bilquis on American Gods, and we did a retrospective of her character and the season and the show. It was so much fun to talk to her. So check that out. It's going live at 6 p.m. tonight, or it's dropping at 6 p.m. tonight, as far as I know. And there's a whole list of my, starting out at the beginning of season 3, where did we come from, and going through the whole of all the episodes. And I'm still going to be doing a couple more retrospective things going forward. So if you're watching American Gods, check that out. I'm sure I'll have more stuff, but at the Emily ESSE everywhere. And please follow, like the things, do the stuff, and say hi, talk to me.
For sure. And then, of course, I'll also remind people about the hashtag for that show as well. So AG Chat with M. So WEM, same thing, M&SU. All right.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And then also, guys, well, just to touch off of what you said, Emily, there also will be a audio version of that for people to enjoy. That's still being put together. That gives more of a like I love saying Sparknotes, so a Sparknotes version of many of the various talking points that happen over the course of that full conversation, or that full interview. So
I appreciate that, Brandon. We did have a few technical issues. The video is watchable, but there's a little bit of I think Yetide's internet was going in and out a little bit. But yeah. So I appreciate. We're eventually going to have the audio
technology.
Too. If anyone has copies.
But
Yay!
Yeah, but for sure. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. It'll be up in, I guess, a couple of hours. But with that being said, I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Just as you can see right down there on Twitter, you can find me at Brandon Troy ENT, on Instagram at Brandon Troy _ENT. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, and see you soon. Till next time. Bye.
Thank you.